The garage door didn't just open, it exploded. Plastic badges, cargo shorts, and khaki fury poured in like it was suburban Normandy. 3 middle-aged men wearing clip-on radios and shirts reading HOA enforcement units screamed something about code compliance breach in progress as they tripped over a leaf blower and knocked over a freezer full of deer meat. And that's when the real chaos began. Because from the shadows behind the minivan, my 16-year-old son Kyle emerged wearing full tactical body armor and gripping an AK-74 like he was auditioning for Call of Duty HOA takedown. He said one word: leave. And for the first time in their HOA cosplaying careers, they did. Let's rewind. My name's Grant Ellison. I'm a quiet guy. I fix HVAC units, grill on Sundays, and mind my damn business. I live in a pleasant enough cul-de-sac in Wisteria Bluffs, where the grass is fake and the drama is aggressively real. My mortal nemesis? Belinda Craig, president for life of the Wisteria Bluffs Homeowners Association. She once fined a family for having a trampoline visible from the street. I'd flown under her radar for 5 years until the day she spotted a small dent in my mailbox post. That's all it took. Belinda locked onto me like a drone strike. First came the violations. Garage door left open for more than 8 minutes. Garden hose uncoiled in non-designated storage pattern. Bird feeder causing aggressive cardinal behavior. The notices arrived daily, each one more absurd than the last. She measured the height of my grass with a ruler at 6 a.m. on Saturdays. She complained that my welcome mat was positioned at an improper angle relative to true north. Then came the photos. Grainy, time-stamped surveillance shots showing my recycling bin positioned 17 inches from the curb instead of 12. She had actually installed a camera specifically to monitor my driveway. I discovered this when I caught the reflection in my neighbor's window. Next, the gossip machine kicked into overdrive. Belinda started telling neighbors my son Kyle was training with paramilitary youth groups because he wore camo Crocs and subscribed to Field and Stream magazine. She whispered at the community pool that our family was stockpiling weapons because Kyle had a paintball gun in the garage. The woman even told the mail carrier that we were probably running some kind of underground bunker because she saw us carrying camping equipment into the house after a weekend trip. When I tried to reason with her at the monthly HOA meeting, she stood up dramatically and declared that my presence was disrupting the feng shui of the community center. She hissed something about maintaining aesthetic order and called my porch furniture a gateway to architectural entropy. By month 3, she'd tried to have me removed from the neighborhood Facebook group 3 separate times. She claimed my posts about grilling techniques were coded messages for anarchist activities. She reported my 4th of July decorations as potential fire hazards in February. The woman was completely unhinged, and she was just getting started. She formed what she called the Compliance Task Force, which was really just 3 other busybodies who had nothing better to do than measure fence heights and count the number of flowers in people's gardens. It escalated when I caught one of Belinda's code scouts, a teenager named Bryce wearing a sash covered in made-up merit badges and a GoPro strapped to his forehead, measuring my lawn with a laser level at 2:15 a.m. The kid was actually crawling on his belly like he was in some kind of special ops mission, whispering measurements into a walkie-talkie. When I flipped on the porch light, he froze like a deer and then tried to army crawl behind my azalea bush. I reported the incident to the sheriff, who couldn't stop laughing when I showed him the security footage. That should have ended it. Instead, Belinda panicked. She assembled her inner circle, which Kyle had started calling the Coven. 3 HOA diehards who referred to themselves as compliance marshals like it was an actual job title. There was Harold, a retired insurance adjuster who carried a measuring tape on his belt like it was a service weapon. Margaret, who had memorized every single HOA bylaw and could quote them verbatim while doing her power walks. And Dennis, who had actually laminated a badge he made at Kinko's that said HOA Special Investigator. They bought matching tactical vests off Amazon, the kind with a dozen pockets that they filled with violation notices and zip ties. They printed fake HOA officer credentials using Microsoft Word and a color printer from 1998. Then they started patrolling the neighborhood in Dennis's minivan, which they had outfitted with amber lights from AutoZone and a magnetic sign that said Compliance Unit. Then came Operation Sweep. Belinda had convinced herself that I was running an illegal shed operation, whatever that means. She claimed my perfectly legal tool shed was actually an unpermitted structure being used for commercial purposes because she once saw me fixing my neighbor's lawnmower in there. No warrant was needed, she declared at an emergency coven meeting in her living room. The HOA bylaws gave her supreme authority, she insisted, completely misinterpreting a clause about property maintenance inspections. They scheduled a forced inspection for the following Saturday at noon. No notice was given because Belinda claimed that would give me time to hide evidence of my alleged crimes against suburban conformity. Which brings us back to the garage door. The 3 compliance marshals had fashioned a battering ram out of PVC pipe and pool noodles. They thought they were being tactical, but they looked like rejected extras from a community theater production of a police procedural. Harold was sweating through his tactical vest before they even reached my driveway. Margaret was reading violation codes out loud like some kind of battle cry. Dennis was live-streaming the whole thing to the neighborhood Facebook group, narrating like he was covering a major news event. They didn't knock. They didn't ring the doorbell. They just charged at my garage door with their pool noodle battering ram, screaming about probable cause and aesthetic violations. The HOA officers didn't expect resistance. They definitely didn't expect Kyle. My son had been monitoring the situation from his bedroom window. He'd seen them approaching in their tactical formation, which looked more like 3 penguins trying to walk in a straight line. Kyle had actually been preparing for his school's mock trial competition, and his debate team had coincidentally been studying property rights and castle doctrine. The body armor was from his paintball league, and the AK-74 was an incredibly realistic airsoft rifle he'd bought for a military history project. But Harold, Margaret, and Dennis didn't know that. When Kyle emerged from behind the minivan in full gear, speaking in a calm but commanding voice, they scattered like startled pigeons. Harold tried to hide behind our recycling bin. Margaret attempted to use her clipboard as a shield. Dennis dropped his phone in the oil stain on the garage floor and started crying about his live stream. Kyle simply stood there, maintaining perfect trigger discipline with his airsoft rifle pointed at the ground, and repeated his single-word command. Leave. They stumbled over each other trying to get out, Harold knocking over my tool rack, Margaret tripping on the garden hose they'd criticized in 17 different violation notices, and Dennis leaving his fake badge behind in his panic. Kyle calmly walked to the garage door button and closed it behind them. Belinda called the real cops within minutes, shrieking into her phone about armed insurrection and HOA authority being challenged. She claimed we had threatened her compliance marshals with military-grade weapons. She demanded a SWAT response. She used the phrase clear and present danger at least 6 times. The 911 operator, who happened to be my cousin's wife, had to mute the call because she was laughing so hard. When the real police arrived, expecting to find some kind of standoff, they instead found Kyle sitting on the porch, drinking lemonade, with his airsoft rifle clearly labeled and set aside, while the 3 compliance marshals huddled in Dennis's minivan, still wearing their Amazon tactical vests. The deputies took statements from everyone. Harold admitted they had no actual authority to enter my property. Margaret confessed that the HOA bylaws didn't actually give them law enforcement powers, despite what Belinda had told them. Dennis showed the officers his fake badge, which one deputy said looked like something from a cereal box prize. Then they reviewed my security footage, which showed the entire embarrassing assault on my garage. The sheriff's department concluded that Belinda's vigilante squad had committed trespassing, impersonating law enforcement, unlawful entry, destruction of property including my tool rack and the dent they'd made in my garage door, and, per the sheriff's exact words, aggravated idiocy. The deputies loved Kyle. They were impressed by his calm response to the situation and his knowledge of property law. They took selfies with him, complimented his trigger discipline, and one even asked where he'd gotten such a realistic airsoft rifle for training purposes. Belinda, meanwhile, was slapped with a court summons and had her Amazon vest seized as evidence. The fake badges were confiscated. The PVC pipe battering ram was photographed for the court record. The entire compliance marshal unit was officially disbanded by law enforcement, with warnings that any further attempts at vigilante HOA enforcement would result in immediate arrest. The HOA board held an emergency vote to remove Belinda the very next evening. The community center was packed. People brought popcorn. Someone set up a bingo game based on which bylaws Belinda would quote in her defense. She tried to filibuster using Robert's Rules of Order and an actual bullhorn she'd brought from home. She claimed the vote was illegal because it hadn't been announced 30 days in advance. She argued that she had acted within her authority as interpreted by her personal understanding of the bylaws. She even tried to call for a vote to remove the other board members instead. It didn't work. The board's attorney, who had been frantically researching liability issues all day, informed everyone that Belinda's actions had exposed the HOA to potential lawsuits that could bankrupt the entire community fund. Turns out, forging municipal badges and leading a pretend SWAT team into someone's garage violates several clauses of the Wisteria Bluffs bylaws. Clause 7.2, to be specific, which states that no homeowner shall impersonate law enforcement or organize a rogue paramilitary unit without explicit written consent from the city council. It was a clause that had been added in 1993 after a different incident involving a previous HOA president and a dispute over mailbox colors. The vote was unanimous. Even Harold, Margaret, and Dennis voted against her, trying to salvage what was left of their reputations. Belinda was escorted from the meeting by the actual police, who had stayed to ensure order. She muttered about structural decay and the fall of order as they walked her out. Her final act was attempting to citizens arrest a plastic flamingo lawn ornament in the community center's garden, claiming it violated the approved decorative statue guidelines. The officer gently guided her past it. The court case was swift. Belinda was found guilty of criminal impersonation, trespassing, and conspiracy to commit breaking and entering. She was sentenced to 180 hours of community service, specifically as a crosswalk attendant for the local middle school where she has to wear a bright neon vest that explicitly states "I am not a cop" in large reflective letters. She was also fined $15,000 in damages and legal fees. When the judge read the sentence, Belinda's face turned 3 different shades of purple, and she actually fainted, knocking over her attorney's water glass in the process.